Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Well, folks, in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about are we the constraints, right? Are we humans our own problem? And then just talking a little bit about some of this, right? This is probably an ongoing thing for all of us. We've all been this for ourselves in our own lives. We've been this willingly or unwillingly or accidentally or otherwise in others' lives, but also culturally too, right? In all the groups. And a lot of times we talk about coming together as teams and within organizations, because that's often where we form up to, try to work together to achieve a goal, right? Serving our customers. But the same paradigm follows us, whether we're talking about friends, family, community, your church, your politics, your this, your that, everything, right? All the different groups that are out there, right? All of culture, and then major cultures, right? So, so there are a lot of similarities, right? And so when we talk about one, a lot of times this can apply to other groups, right? Whether we're talking about ourselves or the group. So anyway, with that bit of that preface, so take some of this as to help yourself, right? Elevate yourself and others, and maybe to reflect. Definitely with this one, more about reflection, right? Maybe we could do more reflection this time in our history. It is the year 2026. But, reflection is not a bad thing. Reflection is a healthy thing. Sometimes, it isn't a matter of obsessing over the past and scrutinizing it into the dirt and shaming ourselves and feeling overly guilty. It's not about that, but it is sometimes about, sometimes it's to celebrate how far we've come, but it's also to acknowledge, ooh, yeah, left turn, right turn, down, up, whatever, right? All the things. So constraints, really, what is a constraint? Constraint essentially is just an obstruction, right? If there's a pothole in the road, it's a constraint. You hit that pothole, it does damage to your car, right? That's one type of constraint, right? Might be a roadblock. Got to figure another way around, right? It impedes our ability to flow naturally through our life, okay? On a daily basis, from hourly through the day, weekly, monthly, all of it, an entire lifetime. And a lot of times we can, for ourselves, we can be our own constraint, right? We can forget to do a thing, fail to do a thing, whether we forgot or not, right? we can actually do something and not realize that we, created a roadblock in our own life. We can do a lot of different things that can slow us up. And when we do things within our own, throughout our own lives to kind of throw us off our own track, right, to grow and thrive, it doesn't mean also that at the same time others and ourselves can be doing this knowingly or unknowingly to other people, right? Now, the knowingly part of this, it would be people who are manipulating, right? They are using constraints. They're purposefully throwing roadblocks in front of other people, right? To thwart their ability to grow and thrive and to exercise their free will, essentially, right? and so that's a decided choice. When people are doing that, right, toward others, right, it's one thing to do it to yourself, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer. But when you're doing that to others, when you're essentially sabotaging them, right, through your words, your actions, your deeds, right? Your actions, deeds, same thing. But when you're doing things, when you're saying things and doing things that are thwarting other people's ability to elevate their own lives and to follow their own path on their own journey, when we're doing those things, we're really planting kind of I'll just call it a brown flag, we're planting a brown flag, and we're essentially saying, you know what? And every time you're doing this to somebody, right? And it doesn't matter if you're, new to the game of life or whether you've been around for a long time. It doesn't matter if you're poor or anywhere in between or wealthy. People who are actually going out there plotting and planning and executing to thwart others' lives, put constraints in their ability to grow and thrive. Well, this is where the physics, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, so often what occurs is when people are doing that, they don't think that there's ever going to be, almost say a scorekeeping, but the physics of the universe, it doesn't really care. Okay, it doesn't really care, and it may not even care that they threw a constraint your way. And it isn't necessarily like some cosmic force necessarily is like a slingshot firing or a cow snap, like snapping them. It isn't that. What it is their own self-conscious, right? Their own unconscious or their self-consciousness derived from their unconscious. It is keeping score. It does know. Every time they intentionally went out there and were constraints in the lives of others, right? This is why you got to be careful, folks. You go out there, you're talking stuff, whether it be at the job site or whether it's after hours, and throwing back some suds or whatever you're doing. It could be you're at church, you're talking about people. You might even be doing things. You may be a business owner and you're doing things to thwart your competitors, right? The only way to deal with competitors is to outperform them. When you do things that are malicious, this is just an example. When you do things that are malicious, you cannot run from your own unconscious mind. It is absolutely keeping score with every single millisecond of your life. So you go out there and you do the thing. That's just baggage that you're holding on to. This is why what you try to rectify and resolve. This is why forgiveness, right, is such a huge deal, right? Because if you don't forgive when you have the opportunity to forgive, now, conversely, when other people, something has to be done to actually forgive, right? So people have to, make amends, right? People have to correct their actions. So if you go out there and you steal, $200,000 from a family member, right? I'm just throwing a hypothetical. $200,000 from a family member that was, say, willed to them, right? Hypothetically speaking. And you play little paperwork games, okay? And you do that, your subconscious and anybody involved is keeping score. And it is literally like a rubber band being pulled back more and more. And why is that? Because there's a time factor here too. The more that you let that go and you don't rectify and correct it, right? You don't make amends, you don't say the sorries and fix, make those corrections, right? Come back around and make those corrections. Then stuff happens down the line. And it was really only your subconscious that did it, right? Now, that being said, if you're a person that wants to exact revenge and these sorts of things, look, folks, that doesn't even work either, okay? Because you do that, and now you are creating your own scenario, okay? And now you see where this can happen with an individual or small groups or families and friends and communities and all this stuff, right? You might have a bunch of people in social media who are just all wild and wacky. And they think, oh, well, I'm just saying things. I'm not really doing anything. I'm just being snarky and rude and weird and just generally generally negative and mean spirited, right? Do you think that your subconscious is forgetting that you're doing that? No. And why do you think we have such health problems, folks? It doesn't all derive from that. Some of that is, things we eat, right? And sadly, the credit, that's another thing. You poison food. If food manufacturers are poisoning food, right, by putting things in there, right, in combinations, right, and then you're eating another type of food that was, say, a certain level of processed, and it has certain chemicals and things, which on their own might be, a neutral effect. Bring them together, it's no different than mixing medications that shouldn't be mixed, right? But if there hasn't been the proper testing to tell you, right? And so all of a sudden you can't figure out why you are breaking out, or you have allergic reactions and all these things, right? Well, do you think that that was willful? Could have been, right? Could have been willful. Could it have been just through neglect? Could have been that too, right? Irrespective of that, when you do something without doing the proper due diligence, there's still a level of your subconscious keeping track of that, right? So this is why I say, folks, we are our own constraint, right? Culturally, as groups, as individuals. The groupthink thing, which I did a video that, talked about groupthink a bit ago. The groupthink thing, it doesn't matter if the group decided to do it. You don't get to obfuscate responsibility. If the group did something and you were part of that group, then you're a part of that. Your subconscious is going to keep score because you're part of that group, and just wild and wacky, negative synchronicities start to pop up here and there, and you don't understand why. Well, I can tell you why. It's an energy thing, folks. It's just an energy thing, and it's your subconscious storing up that energy, right? And it's got to go somewhere, right? And so you don't understand why X, Y, and Z happened. Well, it's probably because you did something, okay? And it isn't always the case, right? Because then it becomes more difficult because the more nefarious and manipulative things that occur, there's what you neglect to do for yourself, which becomes a constraint, right, that you have to overcome. And then there's maybe what somebody else did, knowingly or unknowingly, that also becomes a constraint for you, right? And now all these constraints that you might be somebody who's just getting nailed by a bunch of people and yourself, right? And you're going through a difficult time. Well, you're going through a difficult time and you may not understand why. It may be a mystery to you, right? And while you might be suffering that initial thrust of those constraints, just manage through, do what you got to do, and let people work through, their own subconscious backlash for having done what they've done, okay? When you take, if you're a faithful person, what does, the Creator say? Vengeance is mine. Period. Dot. End of the story. Vengeance is mine. Not mine. Right? So don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't participate. Right? Don't participate in that. So, because it's an energy thing, folks, and it is a subconscious thing, and that energy has to go somewhere, right? And you're either going to pass it, you're either going to obstruct your own journey subconsciously, or it's going to, like I talked about with the health issues and stuff, similarly, right? Or maybe you lean into addictions and codependence type things, and now that becomes that unconscious playing itself out, right? Releasing releasing all of that level in the field, if you will, right? So what can we do now? Now that we've kind of identified and walked around that a little bit, well, what we can do is be cognizant, right? Be aware and conscious, right? That the things that we say and the things that we do not only have consequences to others, but they also have consequences for ourselves. Okay. So, and life is what life is. There isn't going to be a perfect scenario because the butterfly effect, right? You've heard of that. You could do something that you didn't know was having a negative consequence, right? So keep in mind that, this is just part of the terrain of life that we have to walk. But if you're trying to act like, well, I didn't know, but you did know, really. Okay, you can't fool your subconscious, folks. You just can't do it. So how do we correct it? We kind of have to be aware of what we're thinking, what we're saying, and what we're doing, right? And then make corrections. If you've done something nefarious, right? Hopefully nothing, nothing big ticket, super big ticket, right? But if you've done something nefarious, reverse course, fix that, right? Mend that fence, make that apology, XYZ. There's going to be variation from the mildest, small little tidbit things, all the way up to major things, right? Fix it, take responsibility and fix it. And then that way, because then that'll clear that cache out of your subconscious, and you can check that box, right? When I was growing up, my mom used to leave a list of chores, right? And I'd have these lengthy lists. I would work these lists every day when I come home from school. And then, of course, my kids got their list, right? So we're list people, okay. But think of that list in your subconscious. Hey, I want to check off these things. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this relationship. I'm going to apologize for that. I'm going to heal these things, right? And now it's not going to be a perfect scenario, but you do your best and then work your way down through the list. And then you know what you're going to find? You're going to feel better. Your health is going to feel better. Things are going to move more smoothly for you. You're going to find there's just less obstruction on your journey of life. It's simple energy, folks. It's just simple energy. And energy has to go somewhere. And for you to get it, release it in a positive way, make amends, rectify, fix, overcome, own, whatever, right? And like I say again, you're going to feel better. You're going to be way more at ease. You're going to feel more balanced. You're going to be, when you are working with other people on your team, if you're a member of a team, or whether you're leading a team, or whether you're just out in culture in general, you're going to feel more at ease. Okay, so you're going to sleep better. You're just going to feel more refreshed because you let that baggage go. You took care of business, right? All right. So take care of business. All right, folks, that's going to be enough for today. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember to hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When you do this, not only are you helping to transform culture, but you're transforming your own life. But don't forget, we can't transform anything on the outside if we're not willing to transform on the inside. So important. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.